All right, there we go. Well, Ted, first of all, I want to say thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it.
No problem.
Yeah, no, definitely. So tell me a little bit about yourself. How old are you? Where do you live? What do you do?
Uh, I'm 18. I
Yeah.
live in Los Angeles, but I'm going to Oregon for college. And at the moment, I'm just full-time student.
Okay. So are you, did you just graduate high school?
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
2 weeks ago.
All right. So I know we connected on Instagram, so like my knowledge of you is very little, so I have to ask like, and I try to get people on both sides on my Instagram, so I don't know like, are you conservative? Are you more liberal? Like, where do you stand politically?
I'm, I'd say I'm like pretty solidly liberal.
Okay.
Um, like there's some issues where like I'm more open, but yeah.
All right. And is you, so we're talking about pro-life and pro-choice, and
Mhm.
you would say you tend to be more pro-choice, or
Yeah,
all
more
right.
pro.
So, all right. Well, what led you to that? What led you to that conclusion?
A big part of it's just how I've been raised. California has very like liberal abortion laws with not as many restrictions as other states, so the social atmosphere is the same. Um, and then just like I don't see why the government should regulate a surgery like that.
Okay. So, I mean, naturally, I have to ask because I'm pro-life. Obviously, if you follow me on Instagram, that's obvious. But I would ask, like, so, what's your view on like the the baby in the womb? Like, is it a baby? Like, how would you define it?
I definitely like. I don't think it starts as a baby. I definitely think for the most part it's a fetus. I'd say 6 or 7 months. I'd start considering it a baby when it can like live outside of the mother.
Okay. Well, that's pretty far in. 6 or 7 months, man. That's pretty deep. So did you hear about the legislation that was going on, like in the Carolinas, and what, like,
I
you have what's
haven't
going on?
I haven't heard about the Carolinas specifically.
Well, it was a little while back, but they were pretty much even trying to push for like they call it third trimester, like the last, because like pregnancies go in 3 trimesters, and so the
Yeah.
third trimester is from that the last stage, like the 6 to 9 month period. They were even what they call like partial birth abortions, like once the baby's partially born, um, still having that right to say yes, let's kill it. So you would say that's wrong?
Uh, I mean, of course, just because I feel like in those situations, it's never like no one would make that decision lightly. I'd be against that decision, but I feel like in the event that decision's being made, it's likely due to a medical reason. Like if the
Okay.
yeah
So if the mother's life was in danger,
yeah,
right?
or if like even if like the baby wouldn't survive outside, or if it would be in pain for however long it could live.
All right. So like kind of like a mercy kill, would you say
Yeah.
it? All right. So like when you hear someone say they're pro-life, like what do you assume they mean when they say pro-life?
Well, anti-abortion just well, first I assume like Christian because a lot of that comes from like the Bible being like the belief that life begins at conception.
Hmm.
Which I mean, it spreads to other religions, but it seems the brunt of it's focused on Christianity. Um, but what like pro-life, I think anti-abortion.
Okay. Well, that's interesting because it seems like that's kind of been what a lot of people call it now. I was called a pro-forced birther just recently on my Instagram, which I was like, oh, that's a new one. Um,
Yeah.
and I know you said you're open on this topic, right? That's what you
Mm-hmm.
because yes, I am a Christian. So being a Christian, I do believe that life starts at conception, but not only because I'm a Christian, but also because of science. I think science has proven it. So I have to ask, like, have you done like much research, like scientifically, on this issue?
I haven't done much like of the science myself, but I know that often like life it like you're considered to be alive through the brain, like not like the heart doesn't consider it. It's like brain function, which is why like brain dead is how you're like actually considered dead, and like your heart can be donated. So that's like a lot of like when like there is a functioning brain, like the baby, it might not be able to like think and have abstract thought, but like it can feel, then it's like alive.
Okay. All right. Because let me just explain a few things, and maybe we can bounce back and forth from there. Does that sound good?
Yeah.
All right. So for in the 1970s, you get what we call the Roe v. Wade, or early 1970s. You get the Roe v. Wade decision comes down, and back then they don't have the science that we have now. So one thing that they mentioned is they kept calling it a fetus. Well, the funny thing in Latin, that word means small child. So I mean, like we're still calling it a child, right?
Yeah.
So now technically what they're calling it is a zygote. It goes from a zygote to an embryo to a fetus, and then once it's born, then they call it a child. Which, if you do any research scientifically, like we don't even have to go the religious route. If you just go scientifically, what happens is when the egg and the sperm meet, scientists have recognized, and this is scientists across the board, liberal, conservative, this is just science, right? Science doesn't have labels when it comes to politics, right?
Yeah.
It is what it is, and we have to deal with it. And they've said scientifically that it is a brand new organism based upon the fact that the cell makeup of that organism is completely different than the cells that make up your liver or your lungs or anything like that, because that new zygote that has been made when a sperm and an egg come together is completely different, to where it can grow its own liver, it can grow its own brain, it can grow its own heart, limbs, all that stuff. And so since it has within the capacity of itself to do those things, they say because it can do that, it's not like anything else. So it is its own life, right? Because it's yes, it needs a mother at first, but the point is that it can form all of its own things on its own. So they say that's why they believe, but that's why scientists have concluded that life starts at conception.
Okay.
Right. And so coming from science, right? And I say if life starts at conception, and we're going to call it a life, which I don't believe that the zygote is part of the female body. I believe that's a separate human being. I'm apart from the woman. Mm-hmm. So I believe that we are endowed by a creator with certain inalienable rights. That's not the Bible. That is the Declaration of Independence. Yeah. And so like they say that we've been endowed by a creator with unalienable rights, right? God's given us certain rights. And I believe since those rights have come, when life begins, that's why I say like we shouldn't have the right to take away that life. So that's what I would argue.
Okay.
Does that sound like I am?
That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, anti-choice.
No, yeah. No, like that's a fine argument. My question is, because like with like science defining it as a separate organism due to its like ability to grow, mm-hmm. a lot of it, because like growth is like one of the biggest like signs of life that has been like noted so far. Mm-hmm. But why, like, this is gonna be like a really like oof. But why plants are different and some like tumors grow? So where does the difference lie?
With I think the intent, like plants are a form of life, right? I'm not going to sit here and argue for it, but we're not arguing for like the abortion of plants, right? I mean, like, and I think they're different. I think they're categorically different things, right? So a tumor, we need to get rid of that because categorically it's different than a zygote.
Yeah.
Right. So the tumor, like, so like one of the pro-life positions is yes, if the woman's life is at risk, I mean like physically, like if they're like physically gonna die because of it, like, that's the only case in which we see it legit, right? But see it okay for someone to say yes, okay, let's do that, let's have an abortion, right? That's the only case we would permit because then it's life and life, right? But outside of that, so that's just like a tumor. Right? If a tumor is cancerous and it's going to kill you, then definitely get rid of it. Right? We're not going to, but at the same time, I'm not going to compare a zygote, a human life, to a tumor.
Yeah.
I think
So,
that categorically they're just different, right?
okay.
And so that's why I would say, that's what I would say to that.
Okay. So, because then, here, one sec. Because
Now,
then it's,
let me grab my charger really quick.
okay.
Should have plugged this in before I began. It's all good. I'm listening. All right, you're good. Sorry about that.
It's fine. Actually, how much do I have? Yeah, I'm good. What was? Oh, and then like another question is not just like it's not just like the morality of, or like ethics of the issue, because there's never like it's very unlikely that anyone will like reach a solid point on that, but also just like who has the right to determine whether or not like abortion should be allowed? Like, why should the government be able to place restrictions upon it? Because I mean, each state has like police powers, I think, to protect like the health of their people, but at the same time, like restricting an like elective surgery, is that a component of a state's power?
So when it comes to the government, like, so I'm a libertarian, right? I wouldn't consider myself a Republican. I would consider, so I believe in the sovereignty of the individual, over the state, right? So that's essentially what libertarians believe. So sovereignty of the individual over the state, right? All the state, all the purpose of government, I think, has two functions: is to render justice when necessary, and primarily to protect rights. And when I say rights, I mean like what the Constitution talks about: your life, your liberty, and your property.
Okay.
Um, right, but in the Bill of Rights, the number 5, Amendment 5, specifically talks about, someone should not be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say, since it's life, the government's role there is to protect life, right? It's not to infringe upon someone's rights. But if we get down to the numbers and down to the specifics, over 90% of abortions are done out of convenience. I know, like, one of the things that are oftenly brought up are, what about in the case of rape, or in the case of incest, or in the life of the mother? Like, I don't want to be I don't want to be like, I don't want to come off and sound like I am like not sensitive to those situations.
Mm. No,
But when I hear that over 90% of the abortions are due just because they don't want to have the kid, even though they made 90% of the time, they made the choice to sleep with the individual they slept with. They made the choice to go through with that, and now they're going to make the choice to, I would call it, murder that child. For what? Just because it's inconvenient to you, but laying down and sleeping with somebody is convenient, right? So it's out of inconvenience. So I think that that's the part that I'm bothered by, and that's more than the majority. That's a 90%.
yeah.
So if even in the case of, let's say, rape, um, even though, like, the woman literally had nothing to do with getting pregnant there, she was raped, right? I'm completely sensitive to that. I feel bad for any woman that has been raped, but I would argue that, if you, just because you're harmed, does that mean you should harm someone else?
Okay.
And so that's what I would say.
Mm-hmm.
And I like, you get women saying like, "Hey, I was raped and I got an abortion, I'm fine." You got women that say, "Hey, I got raped, I had an abortion, I felt terrible about it." I mean, there's people who didn't have an abortion and they're glad they did. So I don't want to go from a case to case basis, more so just look at the ideas behind it,
Yeah.
because that's what I think is more important. And like, really try to think through, like, let's look at this. And then, like, if it comes to a woman that comes to me saying like, "Well, I got an abortion, blah blah blah," I'm not going to sit there and beat them over the head, right? So
Yeah.
yeah.
And then I put like convenience being like the term used for that like statistic. I think it's a very vague term, just because it's not like out of convenience. It's like it's unlikely that they just woke up one day and was like, or like they just like didn't really want to have a child. It's more like economically they couldn't support a child, or like they just like the situation that they would raise the child in is not like healthy for a child's development. like they physically, like not even medically, they just aren't able to support a child. Like that would be like part of the 90%. Like, because then it's not just like they don't want to have the child, it's the child, like they wouldn't be able to properly care for the child, or
Yeah,
natal care even.
yeah, no, absolutely. And I think one of the ways our government has failed us was is through the foster care system. Like, and that's one thing that I advocate for. And a lot, and like I get again, like I'm glad that you want to talk about this because I think this is like a healthy way of talking about it. Because I've been called like a lot of names on my Instagram, like names I'm just like whatever, like they don't bother me, but it shows like people really don't talk, right?
Yeah.
But one thing I am is a foster parent. Like
Right.
I've fostered kids before because I believe in this, right? I'm like, hey, like I know there's a pastor down in Arizona. He's walked with over 100 different women through this process and then had their kid adopted to someone else who said, hey, I'm not capable of taking care of this child. Where there are options, like you have different adoption agencies that do it. Like I have friends at my church right now. Their adoption resources. We are foster parents. Like so, and that's one thing I think a lot of pro-life people don't talk about, right? Because what do we hear a lot is like, you don't care about the child once they're born. Absolutely, I do, right? And that's why I signed to be a foster parent because I want to help take care of someone's child. Like, hey, I do have the resources necessary to help take care of kids. Even if it's only one, I'm going to do it. Like, you can't pin on me that I need to take care of millions and millions of kids if I believe in pro-life. I don't equate the two. Just like if I don't believe the whole thing that happened in Germany in World War II was right, that doesn't mean I have to find a way to take care of all 6 million Jews all of a sudden.
Yeah.
You know, I just don't see how those equate. But I will say that one thing where the pro-life people have failed is in trying to speak up about different fostering systems that could help those women and help walk them through the steps and say like, hey, if you don't want to have it, that's fine, but let me help. You know, I think that, and honestly, I think it'd do a lot better if it was in the private sector than through the government because the foster care system in Nevada sucks. I'm a part of it and I hate it. It's too much red tape, too much bureaucracy involved in it. But what do you expect when you deal with government?
Yeah.
So, so yeah, that's what I would say. So like, I don't want to sound like insensitive when I say convenience. But again, like that's what I feel like is really what's going on. Like with that, like they don't take care, like they don't have the funds necessary to take care of it. So then the quickest option is murder it. Well, I would say no. I think the quickest option is like, okay, you have consequences to your choices. Like I have 2 kids myself. That's what I teach them. Right. When I had my foster kids, we always did infants. I always did really small kids, and they always were able to end up going back home, thankfully, to their parents who were able to take care of them and things like that. But I always teach my kids like you make a choice. There's a consequence for that choice, right? And so I think abortion has given people a way out of their choices. Is what I would argue.
Okay.
So, like, what do you have to say? I'm talking a lot. What do you have to say about that?
Here, one sec. Actually, I'll be right back.
Yeah, no, you're good.
No. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, we're fine.
That is a good point. I feel like not like none of the discussion is geared towards like foster care. Much of it like with like Alabama and Georgia where the laws are, they have some of like the worst foster care systems in the country so far. So like, would you argue that in order for a state to impose such regulations on abortion, they should also like, if they're going to do it at the same time, they need to also like fund their foster care systems better?
Well, I do know Alabama actually has a better foster. I don't know about Georgia, but I know like Alabama has done a really good job with their foster care system. I was just reading an article about it last week. Like a lot of their foster kids end up going into homes, and not just ending up in the system, which is a good thing, right? No one wants to have a kid stay at foster care. Like no one wants. Like I don't want that. You don't want that. We can all agree on that. But I would say that yeah, if they're going to propose something like that, then yes, they should have something. But if they don't, I still don't think they should let it continue until they figure it out.
Yeah.
Understand? But I would definitely say that, yeah, we definitely need to figure it out. Like there needs to be less red tape, less bureaucracy, um, more chances for private adoption. Because I work with a lady right now who's going through a private organization to adopt, and she told me, excuse me, she told me how strenuous it was and like how long it took and all that because the state, there's so many steps you have to take through the state before you can actually do it, and it's just like, why is there so much? Like this family, good family, husband, wife, they don't have any kids, they want to adopt, and they have a girl who can't take care of the baby. It was like, okay, I'm just gonna have it, and they're like, hey, we'll take your child, right? But then there's all these steps they had to go through and all this stuff, and it's just like, you have a good family. I get you want to make sure to be safe. I get all that, but I mean, the steps they have to take is just so much where it's like, I could see why people would be turned off to it. I would still tell them, don't be turned off to it. You're doing the right thing. But yeah, that's what I would say.
Okay. And then this is just like a question for you,
Sure.
like, because abortion isn't the only like option. There's like Plan B and other forms of contraception, like post, like when, like post, like sex. Like, how do you feel about those? Because they are a form of like termination.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is where like a lot of pro-lifers differ. And this is where more of my Christian ethic comes in, because I am a Christian first before I'm a libertarian. So I would say like ethically, I still think it's wrong. I think it's still morally wrong because I still think because I do believe abortion is murder, right? And so I would still say it's wrong to do that because you're still murdering a child. So that would be my argument. Now you have others who would disagree with me, which is fine. Like I'm willing to talk to them about it too. But I think like a lot of people become inconsistent, and I try to remain consistent about it. So if I believe life starts at conception, anything that's going to snuff out that life is wrong.
Okay.
I,
Then like, sorry,
what's that?
you can.
No.
Yeah, for me, like, because I was like born through IVF, like so, like me and my sister, but we're twins, but there were other like fertilized embryos that weren't born, that were like thrown away or discarded. Would those be considered the same as a fetus?
Great question. That's the one that's one I've read about that I haven't come to a conclusion myself yet. I can't say yes because I mean I have people who I know people who've done the same. And that one's the tricky one where I'm just like, I don't know enough about it to come to a conclusion on my own. But that's pretty cool. You're a twin.
Yeah.
I always want to ask twins what it's like being a twin, but they always say like I don't know anything different.
Yeah, we're fraternal anyway, so it doesn't.
Oh, okay.
It's less cool.
So what do you think about it's less cool. What do you think about it? What do you think about the whole like IBM stuff?
Like personally for me, like I've never been incredibly religious or anything.
Okay.
So like I'm personally like okay with it, just like because like though they are fertilized embryos, especially through IVF, they haven't started growing, if like at all. They haven't like had the chance to like become like a part of the womb. So they like I personally wouldn't count them as a life.
Okay.
But like but I mean like also just like it's the same for like abortion as well. I think my logic is about the same, just because like like there's zero chance of them surviving alone. They're like completely dependent. They can't think or feel. They don't like IVF particularly doesn't have a like heartbeat yet or like Plan B contraception. For me, it's not the same as killing it. It's more similar to like a period for me, just because like unused eggs are discarded by the body. Like the eggs were fertilized, but
okay. All right. So I have to all right. All right. Well, obviously I have to do more research about that. And that's a fair question. And I've heard that question before and I've heard people answer it differently.
Yeah.
But like I like to think through it myself. I just don't want to say, well, this person said it, so I must believe it.
Yeah, I get that.
So let me ask, like, have you ever? Like, I'm not advocating you watch this at all, but have you ever heard of the movie called Silent Scream?
I haven't.
All right. Well, I don't know when. I can't tell you the year. It's an older movie, but it was on YouTube. I don't know if it still is. But there's a movie called The Silent Scream where what it was this lady who wanted to prove that like abortion was completely moral, like it was fine, it was okay. So they did an ultrasound while she was being aborted, and they call it the silent scream for a reason. So you can watch the ultrasound as the abortion's taking place, and they describe what's going on while the abortion's taking place. I'm not recommending you watch it. I've known people that said they can't watch it because they're scared of what they're going to see.
Yeah.
Personally, I watched it and I was disgusted by what I watched. And I actually told, so I was a youth pastor a while back, and I told one of my youth kids about it because he asked me about what I thought about abortion and stuff. And I said, only if you can stomach it. So, because he always said, he goes, as a male, I don't feel like I have the right to talk about it. And I said, well, I said, go watch this and then we'll talk about it again. So he went and watched, and he came back the next day and was like, or the next week and was like, dude, like, no. He said, I can only watch half of it. It couldn't watch, and because you see the brutality behind it, and they call it the silent scream for a reason. You can't hear it, but you could see it. Yeah. So, I mean, and I don't know, I can't remember how far along the lady was. I think it was either like 3 or 4 months, but I can't remember. But I'm not saying go watch it. I'm not advocating for it. But I'm just saying, like, if anyone ever watches this, I'm gonna put this on my YouTube channel if that's okay with you. Um, but if anyone's watching it and they want to go check it out, that's fine. But if you can't stomach it, please don't. But I always try to make that a reference point to where people like can actually see like what's actually happening, right? Like there's an infant in the womb, there's another person, and there's a person in the womb who is being harmed, right? And so I want to advocate for them just as much as I want to advocate for those kids sitting down at the foster care system waiting for a family. Like I tell people all the time, hey, if you have the resources, you need to go grab one of those kids. You need to take care of them. They need you just as much as you need them. I will always advocate for the life outside as well as inside.
Okay.
All right. So, is there anything else you wanted to add or?
I think that's it. Like, I guess this was just like really helpful, just to like actually hear another opinion on it. Just like focused on like the fetus, because like there's a lot of arguments on pro-life, but rarely do I get to like actually like talk to someone who is pro-life. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, no, I live in an echo chamber myself. Like there's a lot of people around me think like me. And so one of the reasons why I started the YouTube channel is to get people like you so that we can converse and we can have conversation and dialogue to where I can begin to understand other people. And another thing is like when you talk to people, you learn that like there are other human beings, so you don't hate them. Right. Like so you like, hey, I know someone who's pro-life and or I know someone who's pro-choice and they don't talk or act the way you're accusing them of acting, so because like I said, I get called all these sorts of names, but then I'm like, dude, I'm not like that at all. But then I've called in the past before I started this, I've called people on the left terrible things, right? Then I got to know people on the left. I'm like, man, they're not like that at all. So I needed to repent myself of some of the things, and so that's all I'm trying to do is trying to get conversations happening so that people can understand that like, hey, we're all humans at the end of the day, so we need to have respect and be civil.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah. Okay, I agree.
all right, awesome. Well, hey, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to come chat with me. I really appreciate that.
No problem. It was great talking.
All right. Yeah, and if you ever have anything else you want to talk about, let me know.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
Take it easy, man.
You too.
All right. Bye.